Story 1. I got tired of carrying the friendship, so one day I stopped calling him to see how long it would take for him to call me. That was 15 years ago. I haven't seen him since. Story 2. We had been best friends since kindergarten. She had always been a little toxic to me, constantly saying negative things. When I was 18, we had a fight over minor issues, and she said, "Maybe you should just slit your wrists, since you're so good at it." I had a history of self-harm and suicide attempts as a teenager. That finally made it clear to me that she wasn't the nicest friend to have around. Story 3. He moved on without explanation. I can't blame him, but I wish we could hang out just one more time like the good old days. Story 4. I realized that my best friend had been speaking negatively about me for some time. I should have known better, as that person will always be just that. Story 5. A once tight social circle of couples turned toxic. Wives ganged up on my wife while the other husbands pretended it didn't happen. My wife and I left the negativity behind. Story 6. I realized that I was being mentally abused by her, so I had to end the friendship to save myself. Your mental health is more important than I am. That shows what kind of person you are, she said. Story 7. It depends on what you want from your friendships, but think of them like a potluck. Everyone brings something to the table, and the spread stays full. If someone keeps showing up with an empty plate and never contributes, eventually they lose their seat. As long as you find a way to contribute, whether it is support, time, or kindness, you will always have a place. Story 8. She chose a guy she had known for 1 month over a friendship of 20 years with me. Not only did he cheat on her, but he also left her as a single mother. Story 9. He came to me complaining about his toxic and unhelpful girlfriend, which I already warned him about years ago. Then suddenly they had a child and got back together, only for him to come to me again complaining about her, and later on, he went back to her again. I'm like, I'm done, man. Story 10. I lost a significant amount of weight. I lost most of my female friends, including my best friend, when I became healthy and started looking really good. Jealousy shows people's true colors, that's for sure. Story 11. He cheated on his wife, and I was the only one to find out. That was tough to carry around and started to break the bond we had. I also worked under him at his business as an independent contractor. Business kind of dried up, so I started coming up with various ideas to generate clients, but he rejected everything. I eventually left to pursue a degree, and almost immediately upon my departure, he implemented my ideas and clients started to pour in. It was frustrating, but I was moving on to better things, so it was whatever. However, not seeing him every day caused the mentor role he fulfilled for me to begin to crumble. The charisma and false wisdom that kept me unaware eventually wore off, and I saw the truth. While he was a fun guy and often felt like a brother, he wasn't a quality person. All the little moments that made me say, finally added up to a picture of someone I couldn't trust or respect. Story 12. He started stealing from me to fund his drug habit. I was there for him repeatedly to help him get sober, but once he began selling my belongings, it was over. We were lifelong best friends from birth to age 22. Story 13. His constant need to condescend and belittle me was challenging. I probably shouldn't have completely ignored him, though. Story 14. She was manipulated by her girlfriend to leave everyone in her life, believing that she was the only one who truly loved her. My best friend never looked back again. Story 15. I started to outgrow them. There was always some drama or issue, and I got tired of it. We ran out of things to talk about, but they would send me constant texts and get upset for not responding. Hanging out began to feel like a chore, and I only agreed to be nice. One day, we were going on a 4-hour road trip. Their idea. I didn't have the money or time, but I agreed. I woke up at 4:30 a.m., drove 30 minutes to pick them up, and they never answered. I waited an hour and then drove off. They called me on the way back home, saying they slept through their alarm and asked me to come back. But I was done. I guess I had been for a while, and that was it. I'm not sad. Story 16. It started little by little when I first moved in with my now husband and had a baby. However, what really ended our friendship was when she cut ties after 12 years because I couldn't attend her wedding a couple of hours away. I was in the process of trying to find an opening at a mental health inpatient treatment facility for my husband, who was very suicidal at the time. I was scared to leave him at home to go to the wedding. I explained everything that was happening, but she claimed I wasn't a loyal person, so she had to end our friendship. I have not spoken to her in a little over 3 years. Story 17. I started an experiment. I decided to wait before putting in effort until he initiated contact. We were already drifting apart. I was pursuing a bachelor's degree while he was unemployed. I began to notice the casual abuse he inflicted on other friends. Our last in-person interaction was a trip to the movies with some school friends, during which he casually insulted the footwear of one of the guys. It was painful to see how he had no tact or concern. I believe this is the 10th year of waiting, but he looked at my profile. Story 18. We had babies 3 months apart. She had hers first. When the baby was born, I went to her house to meet the newest addition. I lived 45 minutes away, was 6 months pregnant, and didn't think twice about coming over. I just did it because that's what you do. I cooked dinner for her family, held her newborn, did arts and crafts with her other child while she rested, cleaned and tidied her home, washed pump parts and bottles, and then headed home. I left feeling like I did everything I could to help her in this new transition from 1 to 2 kids. That was the last time I saw her until her other child's birthday party 4 months later. We would talk via text or phone, but it never bothered me. After I had my baby, there was no desire on her part to meet my child, no offer of help, nothing. To be clear, I never expected anything from her, but I didn't even receive the bare minimum. We were best friends for 12 years. She was my matron of honor at my wedding. Turns out she was my best friend, but I was not hers. I moved to a different state without telling anyone and moved on with my life. I have yet to hear from her, and she still has not met my child. Story 19. He let someone mislead him. We didn't speak for 2 years until mutual friends explained that the misinformation was not true. We resolved our issues. A year later, he passed away. Story 20. He became more aggressive until one day he attacked me. I should have called the police right after. He also wouldn't stop discussing politics, which was becoming annoying. Story 21. I don't remember. We were best friends throughout middle school and high school, but by the time we went on our senior trip, she was barely speaking to me. We never kept in contact after that. I guess I probably did something to ruin it. I was going through some difficult times and drinking a lot, and I really can't clearly remember much from that period. This was 16 years ago, and I still feel sad about it. I hope you're doing well, Sarah. Story 22. Divorce. I was going through a difficult time in my life and never heard from my boyfriend. Then, I saw his sister, and she said, "We missed you last night." He even came to town but didn't bother to call or text. After that, I decided to move on, and honestly, that was a neutral decision. My life is neither better nor worse. Story 23. It hasn't. Other close friendships ended due to one person being a fake friend who enjoyed ghosting and the other being a man-child who didn't understand accountability. Story 24. I trusted him with personal matters, and he threw them back at me just to hurt me, when he was the one who started the conflict in the first place. I have never been disrespected like that before. Story 25. He was what I thought was a very good friend for most of my high school and college years. In the end, our relationship ended because of his insecurities. I was more of a social butterfly, and he felt it would be unwise to invite me to parties anymore, as he believed he was bringing his competition to try to impress the ladies. For the record, I didn't sleep around or hook up. I never pursued a girl he was talking to. He simply didn't like that I seemed to be the life of the party, and I'd often see him in the corner being quiet. I often hung out with him and encouraged him to join us, but he just couldn't talk, and even though I tried to boost his confidence, he would fall flat. To be honest, I wasn't upset about it, as I felt the separation was mutual. I confronted him about it over the phone and said, "Okay, so this is what our friendship will end on. That's fine. I accept this fate. Good luck," and hung up. He didn't really have anything to respond with, which was typical. I simply never called him, deleted his number, and it has been over 25 years since I have heard from or thought about him until now. Sometimes in life, even at the cost of a friendship, it's best to know the truth and where you stand. I know who I am, and I need to spend my time with people who deserve it. Story 26. The transition from childhood friendship to adult friendship is challenging. Nobody warns you, but most childhood friendships do not last because people change, become busy, and have their own priorities. It is difficult as you cannot blame anyone for the friendship not working out, but it will never be the same close friendship as it was in childhood. In a way, we both just grew up. Story 27. She was ungrateful, living rent-free in our home, and was disrespectful to my husband because he would not give her the attention she wanted. Story 28. I considered him my brother until I could no longer tolerate his narcissism. I never confided in anyone, but he would likely be in prison today if it weren't for me. What hurts the most is that he never once thanked me for everything I did for him. I helped him get his life back on track, overcome addiction, and secure a federal job. A part of me died when we parted ways, but removing him from my life was one of the best decisions I've ever made. I wish him the best. Story 29. It felt like walking on eggshells around them. One wrong move and they would not talk to you for a year or until you apologized. It was a constant cycle of negativity. I miss the idea of them, but I do not miss the negativity. Story 30. When you have mental health issues and retreat for long periods, people do not ask about you. This is probably for the best. I will most certainly do it again. Story 31. She was unfaithful to her husband without my knowledge. When she transmitted chlamydia to him, she claimed that she and I had been involved and that I had given it to her. Story 32. I found her in my bathroom on her knees with my boyfriend, who had his pants around his ankles. I confronted them both. Story 33. She believed lies about me, claiming I had been speaking behind her back and bullying her friend. She did not believe me when I denied it, confused because it came out of nowhere. She proceeded to ignore me, and I suppose she eventually realized she had been misled. By then, I was done and told her so when she wrote to me on Facebook, crying about how tragic it would be for a long-standing friendship to end. We had been friends since we were about 8 years old. She threw away 10 years of friendship over baseless lies from someone jealous. Story 34. High school best friend. I grew tired of the lies, manipulation, and secrets. If she felt the need to be dishonest and unkind, why were we friends in the first place? I couldn't handle it anymore. Story 35. There were a few things I realized. I was the one making all the effort calling or texting her, and making all the plans. We always hung out at her house, never mine. She only ever wanted to talk about herself and her problems. I ended that friendship. Story 36. Betrayal. I had a cosmetic medical procedure and sent her pictures of my results. 3 months later, I walked into happy hour, and she was showing my naked pictures to a table full of people I didn't know or barely knew. She couldn't understand why I was so upset. Story 37. I believe there are always two different sides and feelings regarding the same situation. From my perspective, I feel that she was jealous and responsible for denying herself many things, which makes her envious of those who have what she lacks. That's my side of the story. Story 38. They were not willing to be my therapist anymore, and I blocked them out of anger. This is true for about 80% of my friendships. Story 39. Her use of cocaine and alcohol while driving with her daughter in the car resulted in a tragic incident where she killed a man on a bicycle and left the scene. The police found her stumbling down the street. She received a sentence of only 18 months in prison. Story 40. I was always there for her, willing to drop everything. She never had a healthy relationship, so I supported her through the crying and ranting without judgment. Both of us have autoimmune diseases. For years, I was happily married. During COVID-19, my then-husband had an affair and left me. I was completely caught off guard and heartbroken. My life fell apart, and I needed all the support I could get. She said she couldn't be there for me because she was afraid of COVID-19. I understood, as I have the same concern. However, She wouldn't even walk outside with me and mostly didn't call. I never called her again because I felt so betrayed. I had spent so much time with her, sobbing about her troubles whenever her latest relationship fell apart. I was used by this woman, and I never noticed because I didn't need her help. She never treated me well either. I think she realized how she messed up. Now, she posts happy content about being single and how she is manifesting happiness. She wants to be a happiness influencer. Story 41. She was my maid of honor and got drunk at my wedding, chasing the best man and saying she wanted to perform a sexual act. I told my colleague to back off. She was very rude. Story 42. Generally, he was quite selfish and always had been. As an only child, he never learned the basics of sharing. You would always get the short end of the stick with him, and he was possessive over things. At my house, everything was equal. Snacks, video games, drinks, and more. But at his place, it was always a 75-25 split. He once took dinner off my plate and put it on his because his mother made a mistake. Sharing food? He would eat more than half. Playing a video game? He would get several turns before you got one. Going halves on something to share? He would take more. When putting in for a little smoke, he would keep it all instead of dividing it. These small things didn't seem to matter too much at first, but after a while, you would notice it and feel as if you had done something wrong to be treated so poorly. What's strange is that if you ever brought it up, he would brush it off as, "It's not a big deal, get over it," or "my house, my rules." But if you tried the same things with him, he would sulk and couldn't let it go unless he felt at least equal to you. He had to be either equal to or better than you, or he wouldn't be happy. He ditched me repeatedly during our teenage years just to hang out with a different group of friends after claiming he wasn't free, lying to my face about it. The thing is, I knew those people and most of us were friends or at least cordial acquaintances. Almost all attended the same school, except for about 10 people from a few different schools in the area. He constantly ditched us for that other group, even after making plans with us. All I knew at the time was that he had suddenly become rude, mocking small things I did and belittling me in front of mutual friends without provocation. Everyone was taken aback. After a little while, he started belittling everyone else as well, creating an uncomfortable situation that led us to stop inviting him out because he would ruin a perfectly good afternoon or evening. Eventually, he had a breakdown due to drug use and just wasn't the same afterward. He would still insult people unprovoked and owed money to several people we knew we wouldn't see again, so we ultimately cut our losses. Once, while we were in a local park on a sunny day, lazily kicking a ball around and smoking, we invited him out because we were still trying to include him. But when he showed up, he immediately began finding reasons to insult everyone relentlessly. He mocked someone's sunglasses, another person's haircut, someone else's shorts, and the way someone kicked a ball. It just didn't stop. No matter how many times someone said, "Lighten up, dude, calm down," or "That's unnecessary." After a solid hour, we all gave up and decided to leave, reconvening at a different park. After we left, I took most of the same route home as him, but I doubled back to meet up with a few others before heading to a different park. It's a shame. Part of me misses the old him from when we were 12 to 14. Unfortunately, I will always be reminded of how much of a jerk he became around 17 to 20, and I don't really regret cutting ties. We told him how his presence was turning typically fun days into miserable ones, but that didn't stop him from continuing his behavior. Story 43. His intense worship of every conspiracy theory created by his supporters is concerning. I have other friends who are normal individuals that voted for Trump, but they haven't turned into extreme personalities. I haven't spoken to him in 7 years. Story 44. There was never any room in our friendship for me. I was just a sounding board for her problems and complaints. Story 45. Many people are expressing that their best friend disappeared without warning. While I don't doubt this happens, I'd like to share some insights that may help those in similar situations. My husband severed ties with some friends in a manner that seemed abrupt to them. I'm not suggesting you all are like his friends, but I'd like to share his experience. He was treated poorly, disrespected, and subtly mocked for years, and he eventually decided he was finished with it. It was always minor incidents that accumulated over time, so he felt that addressing these issues would make him appear petty. His friends had personalities that led them to deny his feelings or dismiss him as overreacting. He didn't feel he owed them an explanation when he moved on. I support his decision. I feel sad about it, but I understand. For example, he wanted to learn to drive a manual transmission. Without being asked, a friend preemptively stated, "I'd teach you, but I'm afraid you'd mess up my gears." He wasn't even asking for help. Why say that? This was just one of many similar occurrences over the years. Ultimately, he was just done with it. Story 46. One friendship ended after a long time of drifting apart. When she visited my place for the first time after I moved out, she was really rude and reacted strongly towards one of my friends and roommates. It was clear that it was time to stop talking to her after that. Another close friend spread a nasty rumor about me, so I stopped talking to her. However, she had many personal issues, and I began speaking to her again a couple of years later because I felt she needed support. Then she passed away. Story 47. I didn't cater to his feelings and was forced to break up with my girlfriend because he didn't like her. He didn't even check in or reach out when my father passed away. That was the last straw for me. I know they will come back in the future, but I cannot forgive my best friend for selfishly pushing his own agenda and not putting aside petty issues to offer condolences. I had low expectations for friends and people in general except for that one friend. We held each other to a different standard than every other friend, and when it really mattered, that person showed me that no friendship is worth idolizing. People will always come and go, and it is a sad reality I had to confront while also dealing with the loss of my father. Story 48. I made the mistake of telling her, "I love you, and no one will ever be good enough for you in my eyes, but he shouldn't treat you that way." After hearing him verbally and physically abuse her, she told me she was not that good of a girlfriend and that she deserved it. From that moment on, I became the enemy of their love affair. Story 49. She would make plans, but then on the day and the day after, she would completely ignore me. She would question everything I did. She never complimented me the way I complimented her. I tried to tell her about what was going on in my life, both good and bad, but she would ignore me and just tell me about her life, expecting me to reply no matter what. Story 50. I've had the same best friend since I was 7, and I am now 25. However, I did have another best friend. We would talk and hang out nearly daily for 4 to 5 years before it ended. During our junior year, she changed completely. We had a small co-ed group of friends we often hung out with. I stopped being invited when everyone was hanging out at the spot where we usually met. One of the other kids texted me and asked why I never came anymore. I told him that no one ever invited me. He said they would ask my best friend to invite me, but she kept saying I was busy, even making up excuses that I was at a relative's house or sick. She had a crush on a boy who had a girlfriend, so she became friends with the girlfriend to get closer to him. She also hooked up with our other friend's boyfriend, which led that friend to key her car, but that's a different story. Additionally, she tried to get involved with my ex-boyfriend, who had previously assaulted me. I confronted her, but she kept lying and repeating the same behavior, which led to the end of our friendship. It definitely hurt because we were very close. It felt like a switch flipped in her mind during that junior year of high school. Story 51. He started to believe that he owned me. We were quite nerdy, but he tried to control every aspect of my life, including the movies I watched, the games I played, and the apps I installed on my phone. He wanted me to tell him what I wanted to order from Amazon, and he would handle it for me if I gave him the money. He once showed up at my apartment without ringing the doorbell, which unsettled me. Even during my free weekends, he wanted me to spend my time with him. This controlling behavior stressed me out. Then I got a cat and told him I could not continue that way because I needed to take care of my pet, which made him angry. He also touched me in ways I did not appreciate. One day, I stopped responding to his messages. He then chose to befriend my brother. My brother, who advised me to end the friendship, unfortunately became totally involved, and they remain friends to this day. Story 52. She took my recently acquired dog to the animal shelter while I was visiting my parents. She told me it ran away. A few years later, she had my cats euthanized while I was pregnant, claiming they could give my baby toxoplasmosis. She also sabotaged my relationships because she wanted me for herself. Story 53. I finally gave up on my best friend of 30 years because I was exhausted from carrying the weight of the friendship. I miss him, but everything was always on his terms. If he wants to repair the friendship, it's on him. I'm willing, but he has yet to take any action. Story 54. She went off the deep end. Cost me my parents as well. After 10 years of this, I am tired. I am really tired of the daily foolishness that a large part of our society seems to thrive on. Story 55. They stole money from me. It took a lot to accept and make peace with it, but it was a valuable lesson learned in the end. Story 56. I find it hard to maintain friendships since texting became common. We used to talk on the phone, write letters, send cards, and exchange emails. Now it's just, "Hi, how are you?" "Fine. You?" "Good talking to you." I stopped sending emails with a few paragraphs updating people on my life because I would only receive 2 short sentences in return. I would always suggest, "Let's try to get together. We can meet halfway for lunch or dinner." "Sure. Just not now. Busy. Just got back from Majorca. Jet lag." Eventually, I realized I haven't seen this person in 5 years. This person is not my friend. That's when I decided to cut them out. Story 57. Went fully right-wing, anti-science, immersed in conspiracy theories, and deeply religious. He even expressed regret for missing January 6th. Story 58. He fell into the rabbit hole of hateful conspiracy theories and far-right rhetoric during the pandemic and eventually became too toxic to be around. Story 59. He never talked about politics, but it turned out he supported the most ultra-conservative party in my country and actually meant his edgy jokes. Story 60. I was that she disliked my husband, constantly speaking negatively about him, comments that didn't even make sense. He got a job working for a hotel, and I mentioned I was considering a job in the travel industry as well so we could combine discounts and travel more. She responded, "Why would you want to sink to his level?" I was confused. The breaking point was when I accidentally texted her, instead of a coworker, about needing a ride because our car had a flat tire. We owed her some money and hadn't paid her back, so we didn't mention we had bought a car. It sounds bad, I know, but we had just moved over 1,000 miles from anyone we knew and had a new baby. During most of my pregnancy, before getting the car, I was relying on public transportation for more than 5 hours a day. We didn't know anyone who could help, so we needed a vehicle. It wasn't flashy or expensive. Since we were broke, we only had one cell phone, and I left it at home. Halfway through the day, I received an email from her stating she was going to take action if he ever brought our child into the conversation again. She wanted kids, but was not in a stable relationship or situation, so she felt she couldn't have any. Her message regarding throwing it in her face was essentially that we owed her money, but we needed a car for the baby. That was the last straw in her disdain for him. The other situation is more complicated. I was a poor friend. I didn't attend her grandfather's funeral because I thought I would be in the way. I did ask her, and she said not to worry about it. Then she got married, and it was a low-key event with only an online invitation sent about a month before. I was unwell and going through a lot personally. A few hours after it started, I realized what day it was. I felt like it would be worse to show up that late. I then forgot until a day later to wish her a happy birthday. This all happened within the same year. We had been best friends since 3rd grade and had supported each other through so much. I really miss her, and I've tried to reach out a few times, but she doesn't respond. It's fair, though. It was a difficult year, and I was a poor friend. Story 61. We became close and had a sexual relationship. I don't think either of us wanted that, but we stopped talking out of shame, as we were both in relationships with someone else. Story 62. Mental illness led him to create a false scenario in his mind and accuse me of something I never did. He also made statements that were untrue when we first met. He fabricated many things that confused me, and eventually, I had enough and confronted him. Now, he refuses to talk in person and prefers to communicate via text. but that approach isn't working. He lacks maturity and struggles with severe mental illness. All I can do is let him go and hope he will get better. Story 63. I was 17 and felt vulnerable after my dad was wrongfully incarcerated in another country. I was supposed to keep it a secret because it is taboo in my country, but the moment I left, she told her mother about it. It turns out that her mother and my father grew up in the same town. You can connect the dots. Story 64. My ex told me that my former partner seems off and I shouldn't invest in the relationship. I was too blindsided and didn't listen, which caused me to lose my best friend. Story 65. She chose everyone but me, spending secret days out with other people. She never got in touch unless she wanted something and treated me poorly whenever she wasn't the center of attention. I grew up. She didn't. Story 66. I was ghosted and ignored, while the person continued to interact with mutual friends that I introduced them to. I tried to talk it through, but nothing changed. It hurts. I knew this person for 8 years and considered him a brother. People can be hurtful. Story 67. Sadly, he struggled with his mental health. He imagined that his friends and family were against him, which led to a serious incident one night. There was a physical fight and the police were involved. It was quite chaotic. I saw him several times through mutual friends afterward, but years later he claimed it was traumatic for him, despite having caused the whole incident. Even though I am much happier without the drama, I still miss having him in my life. We were best friends for 10 years. Story 68. I went to the Electric Daisy Carnival together, and during the road trip, I experienced one of the worst dissociation episodes of my life. Completely ruined the trip for me from the start. I was physically ill, couldn't eat, and was having endless panic attacks, but I wanted to attend the first night since I paid over $300 for the festival. Before this, I loved raving, but I haven't since. We had some ups and downs in our friendship, but the road trip started off well. We were both excited and nearly inseparable at that point. I stayed in the hotel more than I wished I could have on the first day because I felt so sick, but the next day we were off to the festival. At some point, we separated, with me and one friend, and her with another close friend to see different sets. I ended up feeling very sick again and was going to return to the hotel around 3 to 4 a.m. I tried to text her, but the service was poor, making it hard to get a response. Her messages were unclear, and I remember texting something along the lines of, "You're frustrating me." "Where are you?" Yes, I was moody, and that wasn't nice, but I didn't expect it to be the downfall of our friendship. When I finally found her with our other close friend, she was hysterical and refused to talk to me. I tried to offer her my jacket, but she pushed me away, as did our other friend, who also refused to explain what was going on besides saying, "She's upset." I told them I was going back to the hotel, and without a word, they let me get on the bus alone at 4 a.m. and walk through Las Vegas back to the hotel. Luckily, a very kind person seated next to me on the bus made sure I got back safely. I woke up in the morning to find she had already left the hotel room to spend time with the other friend I mentioned. I went out to buy her an apology gift and texted her that I wanted to see her before I went home to apologize since I had an early flight due to my illness. She said she needed space, which I understood, but when I got home, she came by a couple of days later without any communication in between and left the gift I got her on my porch. After a period of silence, she finally texted me, essentially saying she didn't want us to be friends anymore. I accepted it and blocked her, feeling confused about why I was left in the dark and why we couldn't talk it out. All because I sent a hasty text that I felt guilty about. My other friend also ghosted me. I never got any answers about why she was so hysterical that night. I literally never heard from them again and was abandoned by both friends at the same time. A few days later, after the friendship ended, I received a text from her boyfriend of 5 to 7 years, saying she broke up with him out of nowhere. He came home to find she had taken the dogs and that her belongings were gone. He was heartbroken, and we were both so confused. To this day, it's still a mystery what happened during the hour or two we were apart at the festival, but my best guess is that she used drugs, which we typically did at raves. I believe it triggered her borderline personality disorder, and I think something, maybe my text and the fact that I had been distant throughout the trip because of my illness, may have caused an episode that led her to impulsively end our friendship and her relationship. I hold nothing against her and genuinely hope she's doing well. If anything, I felt more upset with our other friend, who immediately took her side and stonewalled me, despite our closeness. I never got to explain my side of the story, and I believe my illness, leaving early, and overall lack of excitement for the trip were misconstrued as me being a bad friend, which ultimately contributed to the demise of our friendship. If I hadn't had that episode, I believe we could still be friends today. But perhaps it was meant to be, and we were no longer meant for each other. The end. Story 69. We were roommates, both struggling in life and foolishly started sleeping together. I genuinely cared about him and knew it was just friends with benefits, but I wanted to help him, and nothing I did or said got through. Over time, it made me bitter and resentful, combined with my own issues around intimacy, until I eventually had to cut all ties. It was ugly. I said the most hurtful things I've ever said to anyone. Years later, we were both doing better and got along well enough when we bumped into each other at mutual friends' events. It almost seemed like we could finally get back to being friends. Then he died suddenly. I never got the chance to tell him I was sorry. Story 70. People told him I was racist, and even though he's known me since we were kids, he believed them. All because I pointed out that two women were stealing baby formula to feed their children. I pointed out their car, their clothes, their nails, and their hair. For days later, both women were arrested for trying to sell the formula on an online marketplace. Story 71. My addiction hurt all of my relationships. I'm rebuilding the important ones and letting go of the hurtful ones. Story 72. He wouldn't take no for an answer and then blame me for it. It didn't matter what it was. If I was busy and unavailable or uncomfortable with certain things he asked me to do, he would blame me. Story 73. Over time, I noticed that I felt worse about myself whenever I saw him. On the surface, he was friendly and caring, and we had a lot in common. However, there was an element of judgment in him that made me feel self-conscious. He would be very dismissive and even mocking of things I was vulnerable about, such as my creative endeavors. I realized that I was pulling back from things I enjoyed due to a need to appease him, which was stifling me. Slowly, I tried to distance myself from him and wondered if he would react and reach out to me, but he never did. I realized that I had been the initiator of our friendship, and as soon as I stopped, it just fell apart. Story 74. Due to my depression, I was unable to give her the appreciation and mindfulness she deserved. Therefore, we decided this relationship cannot continue for much longer without it becoming awkward or difficult for either of us. Story 75. They were using the personal stories I shared about my heartaches and traumas as punchlines to appear exciting and gain acceptance into the friend groups they desired. They lacked personality aside from betraying others. Story 76. She was extremely mentally unstable. I told her I had too much on my plate to talk her off the ledge every day. After telling her numerous times that she needed therapy or medications and her disregarding my advice, I told her I couldn't continue the friendship. Story 77. She was clearly checked out of the friendship. I was the one who always initiated conversations, hangouts, and other activities. I eventually had enough and blocked her. This was 5 years ago, and part of me still regrets it today. Story 78. I had major surgery and was getting worse, so I texted her to come to the hospital to advocate for me. My blood pressure was 54, and the pain was unbearable. She said, "I will be there in 10 minutes," but never came. 12 days later, I was released from the hospital. She texted me wanting to stop by my house, but she had not contacted me since I was in the hospital. I could not walk down the stairs and told her I needed my husband to return from running errands to open the door. Her reply was, "I will contact you next time I have free time." I blocked her from everywhere. I had been friends for over 2 years. I feel free now. She was so uncaring, and that was the last thing I could handle. Story 79. She became angry with me for not helping her clean her hoarded house. Consequently, she decided to contact Child Protective Services and falsely claim that I was a drug dealer and neglecting my 15-year-old daughter. I cut her out of my life completely and blocked her on all platforms. I also moved halfway across the country. Then I printed out her criminal record, complete with mugshots, and mailed it to every home in her neighborhood, as well as to her employer. Story 80. I only ever talked about her problems. I was friends with her for years, and I realized she didn't even know my favorite color, movie, or any small details about me. She spent so much time sharing her trauma and using me as her therapist that she never thought to learn anything about me. I never noticed this because I'm used to it with people, and I really felt bad for her because of her trauma. However, I woke up on my birthday to a text from her. Instead of wishing me a happy birthday, she sent 6 paragraphs of a traumatic story that happened to her as a child without any warning. After years of friendship, she didn't even know my birthday. I cut it off then and there. Story 81. I realized I avoided her calls and texts and dreaded spending time with her because when I did answer or spent time with her, I ended up crying, feeling insecure, stupid, and pathetic. I recognized this feeling when rewatching The Princess Diaries, where Joe quoted Eleanor Roosevelt to Mia, "No one can make you feel inferior without your consent." Story 82. He hasn't replied to my messages in months and forgot my birthday. Trust me, he has been active on social media and has been replying to our other friends' messages. It just hurts when people you care about suddenly decide they don't care about you anymore. Story 83. You cannot burn someone's house down during a drug-induced frenzy and then blame the owner for trying to hold you accountable when they expect you to pay for damages. Sorry, you are going to lose all your friends for that behavior. Seriously, who would continue to be friends with someone who would intentionally burn down a good friend's house? That is not someone I can trust around my child anymore. I had a tendency to trust untrustworthy people until my child came into the picture. Now, I use my child's safety as a benchmark. If I wouldn't allow someone around my child, then that's probably not a good friend for me. Story 84. When I expressed my stance on the genocide in Gaza, she told me I was an uninformed person who only had one side to choose and I chose wrong. I was very upset, and we have not spoken since. Story 85. Politics and differences in personalities. I grew up to be a progressive liberal while he grew up to be far-right. Story 86. I was struggling with depression at the time. They were so obsessed with talking about themselves that our conversations felt one-sided, and they never asked about me. They wanted to go on holiday, but I declined because I couldn't get the time off work. Their plans included spa trips and dining out, which I would not have enjoyed. After their holiday, they messaged me, listing everything they believed was wrong in my life and insisted that I needed to fix it. They had apparently held an intervention about me without my presence and thought they had the right to dictate how I should live my life, even though they were part of my problem. We never spoke again. Story 87. She always seemed disturbed whenever I called to check on her. She never used to call back unless she needed something. Now I have friends I can call and they call me. We talk, hang out, and get to be ourselves. Be with people who appreciate you and surround yourself with those who can disagree or agree, rather than those who remain neutral all the time, especially when issues arise. Story 88. I met my wife while I was dating another girl. I ended that relationship because I wanted to focus on my future with my wife. The other girl became very angry because she was in love with me and believed we would be together forever, and that she would be the mother of my children. This girl was also part of our friend group. Several of my friends decided to side with her instead of understanding that the situation did not involve them. They did not give me any reasons or goodbyes. They just stopped talking to me. I loved them. Story 89. She was upset with me when I struggled because it was inconvenient for her. She always felt I didn't do enough or perform well enough, even when I tried my best. She felt I let her down, even when I did everything I could to support her in every way possible. She told me that if we met today, we wouldn't be friends because I was too complicated. My problems gave her headaches, and she found me too negative and draining. I always felt inadequate. I became very ill, which she had a hard time accepting, and it took a significant toll on my mental health, as it was out of my control. She often told me how annoying my situation was for her. I cut ties 6 months ago. It was the hardest and best thing I have done for myself. There is much more to share, but this is sufficient for now. Story 90. My best friend decided to blame me for the consequences of his decisions about his life and became increasingly upset until he finally texted me and ended our friendship abruptly. After 10 years, I am pretty sure his wife is manipulative and emotionally abusive. She changed him, and not for the better. I really miss him. I hope someday he finds at least as much happiness as the pain he caused me. Story 91. I realized after graduating high school that she wasn't a good friend. We became friends in first grade, so I felt like we were only friends because we had known each other for a long time. However, I also knew that she wasn't always loyal to me when I needed her. She liked to be the center of attention whenever there was a third person in our friend group, with whom I would inevitably compete for her friendship. She also displayed a toxic behavior where, if I forgot to talk to her or seemed dismissive, she would ignore me for a week until she felt comfortable becoming friends again. Briefly, she became a bully to me in middle school. It took moving away from her and finding a new group of friends in college, which I still have, to realize she wasn't the type of person I wanted to keep in my life. It's been 10 years since I've heard anything from her, and I couldn't be happier with my decision. Story 92. She constantly canceled plans, and I was the only one who initiated them. I was always the first one to message her. I decided to stop messaging her to see how long it would take her to notice. A month is too long. Story 93. He moved in with my mother and me after his mother kicked him out. He worked but never paid any rent and was about £1,200 behind. His room and the whole house also smelled of marijuana. When he moved out, we found a used sex toy, and it was full of substances. Story 94. He became famous and completely cut me off, pretending like I don't exist. One would think he would bring me with him on tour or even offer me a job, but he just ghosted me as if I did something wrong when I didn't. Story 95. The people here who are taking responsibility for their friendships ending is frankly refreshing to see on Reddit. While it is still a minority perspective, it is nice to see nonetheless. Story 96. Moved in with her boyfriend, and that marked the beginning of the end. There were no more sleepovers, which were like all our hangouts. She was always a poor communicator. We only really talked during our get-togethers, and then she moved away. Eventually, she came back, but it wasn't the same. We had become different people. It's disappointing, too, because she was the last person I knew from my childhood. Story 97. He was my friend since I was 11 years old. We were good friends, and he actually liked me much more than I liked him. We have so many memories together from school. He was not very successful in life and faced challenges with academics. Now he is 23 and working for a fraudulent investment company. He tried to scam me by making me invest in a shady scheme. I could not believe he would do that to me. I tried to help him leave that job, but he insisted that it was legitimate. Eventually, he was caught, and that marked the end of our friendship. That day, I realized that nobody can be trusted blindly. People change a lot. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.